Every artificial intelligence you've ever used was born inside a single machine that only one company on Earth knows how to build. That company sits in a quiet town in the Netherlands most people couldn't find on a map. And if its factory went dark tomorrow, the entire advance of AI would freeze, with no backup and no second supplier anywhere in the world. This is the most important company you've never heard of, and it's the most fragile choke point in the modern economy. The company is called ASML, and the machine it builds is an extreme ultraviolet lithography system. That's the tool that prints the most advanced computer chips in existence. The chips inside NVIDIA's AI processors, inside your phone, inside the data centers, training every model you've ever heard of. Without this machine, those chips simply can't be made. And here's the part that should stop you cold. ASML is the only company on the planet that can build one. They don't lead this market. They are the entire market. It's a flawless, total monopoly on the single tool the whole AI industry runs on, and they ship only a few dozen of them a year. So, how did a single company in a quiet Dutch town end up with a monopoly this absolute on the most important machine in the world? It starts with a problem the rest of the industry had already given up on. That problem was a wall, and it was made of light. For decades, chips got faster by shrinking, by cramming more transistors into the same tiny space. And to draw something smaller, you need a finer pen. In chip making, that pen is light. By the 2000s, the features had become so small that ordinary light was simply too thick to draw them, and the industry needed a radically shorter wavelength called extreme ultraviolet, which almost everyone believed was physically impossible to harness. For nearly 30 years, ASML chased that impossible problem and burned through around $9 billion trying to crack it. The bet got so big and so risky that the company couldn't even fund it alone. So in 2012, its own customer stepped in to keep the project alive. Intel, Samsung, and TSMC, the three biggest chip makers on Earth, bought up chunks of ASML and poured their own cash into the research, because they understood that whoever solved this would hold the keys to the entire future of computing. ASML solved it, and this is what the cyberpunk future actually looks like in real life. It's one private company that the world's most powerful governments now have to negotiate around just to build their own technology. So, what exactly is this machine, and why can nobody else build one? Start with the light. To create extreme ultraviolet, ASML's system fires microscopic droplets of molten tin through a vacuum, 50,000 of them every single second, and blasts each droplet twice with one of the most powerful industrial lasers ever made. The impact vaporizes the tin into a plasma hotter than the surface of the sun, and that plasma glows in exactly the wavelength they need. But this light is so delicate that it gets absorbed by almost everything, including air and even glass. So the whole process has to happen in a vacuum, and the light is steered with mirrors instead of lenses. And these aren't ordinary mirrors. They're the smoothest objects humanity has ever manufactured, polished by the German optics firm Zeiss so precisely that if you scaled one up to the size of Germany, its tallest bump would stand no higher than 1/10 of a millimeter. Bolt all of this together and you get a machine with around 100,000 parts, weighing roughly 200 tons, that ships to its customers inside 40 freight containers, 20 trucks, and 3 jumbo jets, and costs about $170 million each. The newest version costs closer to $400 million. But building the machine is only half the story. The other half is who controls it, and that turns out to be a very short list. But to see who actually holds the power here, you have to look at the whole supply chain, because ASML is really just the visible tip of it. The company doesn't even make every piece itself. The impossible mirrors come from Zeiss in Germany, the lasers from another German firm called Trumpf, and the core light source technology came from a San Diego company called Cymer that ASML simply bought. So the single most strategic machine on Earth is built by a tight little alliance of Western companies, and nobody outside that circle can replicate it. From ASML, the machines go to just 3 customers capable of using them: TSMC in Taiwan, Samsung in Korea, and Intel. Those factories print the chips go to companies like NVIDIA and Apple, and from there into the AI and the devices you touch every day. ASML is now worth several $100 billion, one of the most valuable companies in all of Europe, and yet most people have never once heard its name. Whoever controls that one company quietly controls who is allowed to build the future. And here's where it stops being an engineering story and becomes a weapon. If one company is the only door to advanced chips, then controlling that door is the most powerful move in global politics. And that's exactly what's happened. Since 2019, under heavy pressure from the United States, the Dutch government has blocked ASML from selling a single extreme ultraviolet machine to China. Not one has ever been delivered there. China has since poured tens of billions of dollars into building its own version, and it still can't do it, because the problem really is that hard. So the most populous nation on Earth has been locked out of the most advanced chips on the planet by export rules written around one company in one Dutch town. And it gets more dangerous still because most of these machines do their real work inside Taiwan, an island that China claims as its own and that sits barely 100 miles off its coast. This choke point isn't just fragile, it sits directly on the fault line of the next great power war. Right now, while you're watching this, the entire AI arms race runs through this one bottleneck. The hundreds of billions that NVIDIA, Microsoft, OpenAI, and Google are pouring into AI, and the trillions in market value riding on top of it, all of it ultimately funnels through a few dozen machines a year built in a single factory in a single town with no plan B. One serious fire, one earthquake, one blockade, one war, and the supply of new advanced chips slows to a trickle, and the progress of the technology that every government has now bet its future on slows down with it. The most important industry of the century is balanced on a single point that almost nobody can even see. So, the next time someone tells you the future of AI is a race to write smarter code, remember where that code actually has to be born. Every model and every breakthrough you'll ever hear about ultimately depends on one impossible machine that only a single company on Earth knows how to build. In a quiet Dutch town you'd never heard of until 5 minutes ago, the most powerful technology humanity has ever created is balanced on the narrowest base imaginable, and the handful of people racing to control that base understand it perfectly. You're just not meant to notice. Next time we follow these chips out of the machine and into the one factory in Taiwan that the entire world is quietly terrified of losing.